Hi, everyone. I'm Steven Sigman,
I'm Mike Messinio.
and this is the weekly movie throwdown, where each week we look at two films that share a little bit of DNA, and we have a conversation to try to figure out which one is the better of the two. This week, we're staying on the Ryan Gosling train, and we're going to look at 2010's The Other Guys and put it up against 2016's The Nice Guys. Both are buddy cop movies, kind of cops, I guess. I guess Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe aren't really cops, but buddy movies. Both, to my surprise, have a bit of like corporate intrigue in them, which I didn't really expect. So it's going to be interesting to talk about them. Before we get into the discussion, do you have any wins of the week, Mike, that you want to mention?
Just one. Because my movie subscription is about to end, I've been trying to catch up on things on that channel. And I watched Mussolini, Son of the Century, which was on my radar. And but I realized I better finish watching it this week. So yeah, it doesn't 100% work, but it's pretty ambitious and pretty entertaining, I have to say. It's not exactly what I expected, but a really good watch. And the lead actor who plays Mussolini is really sensational in it. So it's a lot of interesting angles and shots and shot in a really ambitious way, we'll say. So yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. It's a little long, 8 episodes, but and a little more surprisingly relevant today than we might think it would be. So
Yeah. I saw that on Mubi, but I haven't watched it. Coincidentally, I did. This isn't really a win of the week for me, but I kind of dug into Mubi this week because February 24th, I was reminded by my internet, is the day Laura Palmer's body was found on Twin Peaks. So I went back to Mubi and started watching Twin Peaks. Always a win of the week, but not worth really digging into, about Twin Peaks.
I was going to check out Twin Peaks, but realized I wouldn't have enough time to finish it because I think my subscription's up in like a week. So, and I wasn't going to.
I'm sure it's somewhere else too, on another streamer. I don't know. I have a nice big fat Blu-ray box set of the show and the film back here that I really love.
I am not surprised by that at all.
Yeah. One other thing I did watch, I wouldn't necessarily call it a win of the week, but since we're talking about Mubi, I watched this thing called Realm of Satan, which is it's just like this documentary portrait of Satanists. And it's just like these vignettes. There's almost no dialogue in it. It's just like everything almost looks like a painting. It's just this very weird movie that I kind of had a lot of fun with because it's almost like still cameras, and you see people in like, I don't know, leather outfits and like have pentagrams behind them. It sounds much more insane than it actually is, but it was an interesting watch, to be sure.
Well, I don't know if I recommended this to you, but in the past, but there's a podcast that came out this past year called The Devil You Know, which is about the Satanic Panic of the 80s. And it does a good job of kind of tracing the Satanic Panic to its origins. And it's Canadian. Surprisingly, it kind of started in Canada. And it's based on a psychiatrist and a patient of his that kind of led to this discovery of past abuse, but there was like Satanism involved and all kinds of things. And whether or not any of this is true, but it created like a cottage industry of people who supposedly knew what Satanism was. I mean, because we both lived through that and remember it kind of in a peripheral way about why our parents were suddenly afraid of everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to the origins of it is it's an interesting listen that kind of helps pinpoint these moments and the charlatans that kind of jump into the fray to promote the idea of combating Satanism as essentially as a way to make money. It creates a profit industry of people that become experts on the Satanic Panic.
Yeah. That's interesting that you mentioned that. I mean, we could talk about this for an hour, but there's this, she's not an influencer, but she's one of those self-help gurus. Her name's Teal Swan. And she had a documentary called, I think it's called The Deep End on Hulu a few years ago. And a lot of people say that she's basically a cult leader. So she hired this person who investigates and basically assesses movements to determine whether they're cults or not, so that she could have it disproven that she's a cult leader. Turns out she's a cult leader, but the the impetus for it is that she had all this trauma as a child in the 80s, and it's all of the satanic panic stuff where the psychiatrist she was seeing implanted false memories of like Satanism and abuse. And it seems like that's kind of the thing that runs rampant is these psychiatrists putting memories in that didn't exist, and they all like revolve around Satan in the 80s. It's really like such a boogeyman that's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
I mean, what it comes down to is you had two things essentially, which were psychiatrists kind of using, because regression therapy became a big thing. And so that started getting used and they connected to the Satan thing. But then you also just had a bunch of punk kids who were trying to rebel and they were using Satanism as a way because it was in the zeitgeist then. So they start using it and start putting pentagrams on things and then it just kind of takes off. So you have this combination of these two things.
And everything was satanic. I mean, that's why like the Tipper Gore and the PMRC were established, right? Because Satan music. You have the West Memphis Three because they had Stephen King books. They were committed for murdering children, and like it's all crazy. All right, that's a big detour. No Satan involved in this week's films, other than corporations, which is more of a devil than Satan himself, I think. So let's move into talking about these two very lighthearted films. The Nice Guys and The Other Guys. So your son pitched this matchup.
Yeah, that's the strangest part of this is that it was talking about wanting to do The Other Guy, not The Other Guy. Actually, had wanted to do The Nice Guys because I really loved this movie and was trying to think of something to pair it with. And my 11-year-old son, last year, around the Christmas holiday, we were just trying to find funny movies to watch with the kids, which are pretty hard to do. And I'm not sure if this was the greatest decision, but I decided to just watch The Other Guys with the kids. And they loved it. It was a family favorite. They really loved this movie. So when I was trying to figure out movies to pair with The Nice Guys, I think he just naturally associated guys and guys. Let's be clear, he has never watched The Nice Guys because I'm not a terrible parent. So I did not show him that movie. But we did watch The Other Guys, and he just put the two together and was like, "You should do The Other Guys and The Nice Guys." At first, I thought, well, other than the names, I don't know if these even connect at all. It just seemed like a fun pairing, but it turns out they actually do have surprisingly more connections than I would have thought when we randomly put them together.
They really do. It's kind of fascinating. I mean, it sounds like we just sort of stumbled into this pairing, but we're almost like the characters sort of stumbling into something much bigger than we anticipated.
Right.
So there's a kind of a corporate greed element to both of them. There's the buddy cop tone to it. So yeah, I mean, really at its core, there's a lot to discuss here and compare, which I was not expecting. So I'm excited to get into it. I know you are a big fan of The Nice Guys, but what is your take on The Other Guys?
Well, yeah, as I'd said, I thought The Other Guys was a bit of a throwaway. We're just trying to find a funny movie to watch with the kids. And yeah, it was just, everyone loved it. Going back and watching it, it was just almost a breath of fresh air of being able to watch a movie that was, the comedy was really absurd. But I think the trick about a good action comedy is that you have to take both things seriously. And the comedy is very much what you expect from Will Ferrell, Adam McKay kind of movie. A lot of it you could tell is being ad-libbed and it's completely absurd. But the action's taken very seriously, and there are some high-end action pieces in this movie, and it's not a joke in any way. So you have to do both. And what I think is great, and the other reason the pairing works, which I hadn't really thought about, is that The Other Guys is almost a tribute to buddy cop movies, which around 2010 was a genre that was kind of waning. If you look at post 2000, the only real buddy cop movies that were made were kind of sequels to ones that had hit in the 90s, whether it's Rush Hour, sequels to Rush Hour came out. There's a couple of others, but it was kind of a dying genre. So the way to revive it almost was to make it absurd and make it into a comedy. So that was Adam McKay's idea anyway. But if you look up buddy cop movie on Wikipedia, it literally references Shane Black. He's like in
Yeah.
the Wikipedia entry for buddy cop movie. Lethal Weapon, which Shane Black wrote, more or less invents the template for what we consider the buddy cop movie. So you have these connections, and it's almost everything coming out subsequently kind of pays tribute to that original Lethal Weapon movie. So the other guys just follows that lineage and takes it to the most absurd levels it can be.
Let me give you a quick overview that I pulled off the internet for the other guys, because as I read both of these overviews, they almost overlap. And I think that's an important thing in our comparison, is that the two of these, even though the stories are different and the structure is different, there's a lot of like one-to-one comparison we can do. And they actually just make a really fun double feature, I think. So here's what the other guys is about. Two mismatched New York City detectives seize an opportunity to step up like the city's top cops, whom they idolize, only things don't quite go as planned. I mean, that's a very distilled version of what's happening here. And there are a lot of messages in this film that I think are important, but don't necessarily work all that well here. There's kind of the hero worship aspect of these two cops, Danson and Highsmith, who are just clearly bad cops. But it's like everybody's almost under this spell, like the entire city. And, their being in the film kind of shows the farcical nature of what McKay is trying to do here, and the delivery system for his message. And I just really kind of love the absurdity of these two guys. And then that opens up a premise, which, the template for buddy cop films is very sort of straightforward. But this is like, these guys are bench warmers who, get called up to play when the starters get injured or something. And they have to sort of like find themselves to perform in that moment. And I really love that. I think that's a great way to show this story and to kind of put the genre on its ear. And then you have the political leanings that Adam McKay has, which I think this is really the start of for him. I think you're seeing that sort of activism directing that you're going to see later in like Succession and Vice and Big Short. But yeah, I really love just about every aspect of this. I don't think it's a perfect movie, and I don't think it's as good as The Nice Guys, spoiler alert, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it just it ends up being more fun than it has a right to be, because you're right. It's a little heavy-handed in a couple of ways. It's heavy-handed in the fact that the comedy is so ridiculous in a lot of ways. But also, yeah, you're seeing McKay kind of Trojan horse his anti-capitalist message through a buddy cop movie, which is, I wouldn't say it's daring, but it's based on the work that he'd done previously, you're not going to expect that from a McKay movie. So he drops in even the ending and the end credits where he's giving you statistics about Ponzi schemes, which was really something. If you read it, I mean, he's just kind of putting it out there for you. But yeah, just this. I mean, don't forget 2010. I mean, we're coming off with the financial crisis 2008, which I think is really what. I mean, I can't speak for Adam McKay, but I think it was an activating moment for a lot of people, the 2008 financial crisis. And I think that really put things in perspective for him. And so you can see that from that point on, he becomes minorly obsessed with all of the fraud that was running through the financial systems that led to the crisis of 2008. So he's focused on Ponzi schemes and all these other things. And that's how he ends up with directing The Big Short. But yeah, just this idea that you have this giant corporate malfeasance and they're trying to steal from Peter to pay Paul. And then in the end, no one really ends up getting caught or doing any time for it. So all of those sadly end up being pretty prescient about the way things work.
Yeah, I think they he really is swinging for the fences here and maybe doesn't have his form down yet. It's like The Big Short is almost a more refined version of this in a way, but it's interesting that it's tough to do corporate crime on film. I mean, to make it really interesting. And I think what I like about this is that you have the Wahlberg character who's basically like straight out of an 80s buddy cop movie, and everything to him is like drugs and gritty
Hang
crime.
on, you did notice that in his apartment he has a
Yep,
poster for Cobra, right? I'm sure
that's
you
right.
noticed that. I
Oh,
mean, that is
yeah.
as good an indicator of any as to where his mindset is, and I love that. That's a perfect shorthand for exactly how he thinks.
He's a very Reagan era sledgehammer for justice kind of guy. And great as a straight man. I mean, I think I kind of had trouble figuring out who the straight man was for a little bit in this because Will Ferrell plays such a buttoned up character. I mean, he's a forensic accountant, but I think Wahlberg is the straight man because he's reacting. He's reacting to the stuff that Will Ferrell does, which is sometimes sort of subdued, but it's always funny. And sometimes it's just completely nuts. So he's sort of all over the place. But I'm really surprised by Mark Wahlberg in this movie. I mean, he's still playing Mark Wahlberg essentially, but the comedic timing is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a little. I would go so far as to say it's a little Statham-esque, and that's as
That's a
high,
good
and that is as
call.
high a compliment as I can pay an actor. So, I mean, so that's big shoes to fill. But going back to the
Wow.
original point, we were talking about a bit about Trojan horses. What this also feels like a bit of a Trojan horse in that you start with these two larger than life cops who are just wrecking balls. They do millions of dollars in damage to get $78,000 worth of cocaine or whatever it was. But I think what McKay is also trying to show you is almost what the future of crime is. That these guys are fighting the old school crime, which is like a relic of the past. But it turns out that your forensic accountant is actually the crime fighter of the future because that is where the real crime is taking place. And so he kind of also turns that in a little bit. And I hadn't thought about it until just now as I'm talking about it. That really that's what he's giving you as well. That the guys that are snatching, grabbing jewelry in a jewelry store, that's not the crime. It's the actual billions of dollars being stolen that you need really smart people to be working on. And that is where the real work is being done.
It's really just I wouldn't say it's masterful the way he's getting that message across because I feel like it's very shoehorned in, and I think that really detracts from the story itself. But it's refreshing in a way, and as I said, it's hard to do that. And I think you know there are some great films about corporate crime, like you know Chinatown, All the President's Men, any John Grisham adaptation from the 90s. Like these are all great like structural crime films and none of them have that comedy to it. So I really applaud McKay for trying to basically put the medicine in a spoonful of sugar. And I don't know how effective that is as far as like keeping the tone consistent or keeping the story interesting because to me it kind of falls apart in the last maybe third or half, and that's
Yeah, it's
unfortunate.
very hard to do. It's very hard to keep both of these tones, both of these balls in the air at the same time and give them equal weight. But I do think he deserves credit for making a surprisingly sophisticated corporate crime
Yeah,
plot line in a completely stupid action comedy, right? It's yeah, it's surprisingly more sophisticated than you would think it would.
I think the common denominator here is Will Ferrell because if you look at the things McKay did before this, is Anchorman, Talladega Nights, and Step Brothers. So you're taking that kind of comedy and then putting this very serious message into it. And again, I applaud him for that swing because we need more of that.
Yeah,
And
we
it's
always
really fun.
appreciate the effort when someone takes a big swing. It should always be applauded. And again, McKay had earned the right to take a big swing because he'd made 3 highly successful movies with Will Ferrell up to this point. So I think that pairing could almost do anything at this point.
What do you think about Will Ferrell in this movie?
I actually think that I feel about this. I feel about Will Ferrell, particularly in this movie, the way I feel about Austin Powers. I know that's a weird segue, but
Go on.
so the thing about Austin Powers is that when I first watched it, I didn't necessarily love it. I thought it was okay. But the more that I watched Austin Powers, just the first one, by the way, only the first one. Let's not the sequel. We're putting those aside. That's completely separate things. But the original, the more that I watched it, the more I appreciated the fact that I think it was borderline genius and how good the writing was and how subtly funny everything was. Like everything became funnier on rewatch because there were so many little things that it was either paying homage to or taking the piss out of that I didn't even notice it at first. And Will Ferrell to me is similar in that way, where each time I watch it, I'll hear a line that I actually hadn't heard before that he says kind of offhandedly, which I just find even funnier than before. Yeah, I'm almost on the line where I think Will Ferrell's a comedic genius, full stop. Like I think there's so many little things that he does, even the way he reacts to things. If you watch the outtakes, it's so hard for Mark Wahlberg to keep himself together while doing these scenes with Will Ferrell because he'll go on and on and on about something like the lion versus the fish thing. That story is like 2 minutes long. I mean, I think it took a lot of takes that Mark Wahlberg didn't break up during that because he just really is telling this a long story about this.
Yeah, I really love that. That moment is it. I mean, it just establishes so much very early on in the film as to what you're getting with Will Ferrell's character. For me,
even a perfect example for me is a line that gets funnier every time, and I don't even know why. Is that when they're in the car and after they're listening to Little River Band and the CD gets thrown out of the car, and then he puts it back on, and he's like, "I've always got Little River Band queued up. I got a 6-disc changer." Like, some the way he says that, it gets funnier every time I hear it. I have no idea why.
There's so many things like that just go on throughout, and I think I have trouble not seeing everything Will Ferrell does as kind of an extended SNL sketch because that's kind of where I first saw him. And I mean, he worked with Adam McKay as his writer on the show. And so they really developed a shorthand there. But I think that sensibility comes over into all of these films. And just doing like a long form version of an SNL sketch, you're going to have like hits and misses a little more often than not. But I really almost all the time like Will Ferrell because I think he goes up to that edge comedically and sometimes he steps over it. And that's kind of when he loses me. And I think that's when he gets fairly irritating to people because he's comfortable irritating people. And I kind of love that, but I don't always, jive with it. But in this, I think he just does such a good job of being, the film itself is tonally all over the place, and that's not a good thing. But I think Will Ferrell's character, Alan Gamble, being tonally all over the place works really well because he's funny. He's funny on like a subtle level, and then he's also completely ridiculous. He's kind of serious, but even when he's serious, he's a little funny. But I love the way he balances that tone.
Yeah, 100%. Another line that I didn't even catch until the 4th time I watched this movie, when they're at his house and he's talking about the way he's taken up editing on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then he says offhandedly, "I edited 3 minutes out of Goodfellas last weekend." Yeah. Like I didn't even hear that until like the 4th time I watched it. And yeah, it's things like that where also connections between these two movies. I personally think that Will Ferrell is one of the greatest overreactors to things in film history. Like when he gets the coffee thrown on him and the way he reacts to that, like he's been shot with a gun, and everything in the post-explosion scene is just as good as it gets. Like no one overreacts better than Will Ferrell. But Ryan Gosling in The Nice Guys almost reaches like Will Ferrell levels. He has two screaming reactions. I mean, one of which when he gets his arm broken, which is just as great a scream as I've ever heard by a male actor as a reaction to getting a bone broken. And there's a couple of other scenes where he's just screaming because something bad is happening. And yeah, I would put them toe to toe in terms of best overreactors to situations in movies.
I'm going to have a lot to say about my new king, Ryan Gosling, and his comedic
Mm-hmm.
genius. But Will Ferrell, that's the thing, I think, is that's how he goes up to and sometimes over the line is by sticking with something. That post explosion scene is a perfect example of that. But there's no way I don't have soft tissue damage. I mean, there are like 10 lines there when any other actor is going to put 5 lines. But
And again,
he
if you watch the
repeats them,
outtakes, there's a lot more of that. Like
I'm
he
sure.
was throwing out a lot of lines,
Yeah.
and these are just the ones they kept. I don't know if these are even better than the ones that were in the outtakes, but yeah.
It's almost ruined by Wahlberg talking about the authenticity of Star Wars. Him trying to chime in on Will Ferrell's riff, I think, kind of takes it down a little bit for me. And that, that's what I think is Wahlberg is very funny in this Statham-esque way. I don't know that he should be improvising, but I would imagine you have to in this film. I don't know how much of
Right.
his stuff
You're
is on
gonna
the
have to
page
give
or
it a
not, but
shot. You can't be in this
yeah.
environment and not give it a go. I will say though, in terms of Mark Wahlberg, that we tend to forget. I mean, we think of this as really one of the first comedies that he did, and he goes on to make 2 more movies with Will Ferrell because they have really good chemistry together. Um, but he when he was a young actor, when we forget early on, I mean, one of his first movies, he was in that movie Renaissance Man with Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Remember that movie? It was directed by Penny
Yeah.
Marshall.
Right.
So he was dabbling in this before, and then of course I Heart Huckabees, where he does something similar to this, where he's not necessarily the funny person in the movie. He's kind of being Mark Wahlberg, but putting him in the context of a comedy makes it work.
And in sticking with David O. Russell, he was in Three Kings, which he has a comedic sort of role in, and The Big Hit. So he's been really doing this comedy for a long time, but you just don't associate him with that. I mean, speaking of David O. Russell, in the same year that this comes out, The Fighter is released. And I mean, unfortunate for him, he's basically the only person in the cast who didn't get nominated or has won an Oscar for that film. But maybe the other guys hurt his chances for Best Actor in The Fighter because Melissa Leo won one, Christian Bale, Amy Adams nominated. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, you don't think of him as a comedic actor, but he's really good at it. I mean, just think about Andy Samberg doing that impression of him. I mean, that's like comedy on top of the comedy, making fun of how perhaps unintentionally comedic Mark Wahlberg just is in general. I don't know. But he's a funny guy. I mean, he's a funny guy reactively. I don't know that he's someone who's going to lead the comedy necessarily, but he does a great job in this. And to keep up with Will Ferrell, I think is commendable because that's a hard task. Did you I don't know if you know, I'm just completely pointing this out at random, but there's a scene where they go drinking. The first time they go drinking, when Will Ferrell sings those Irish songs that are just terrible. I don't know if you know that bar or not, but that was at Peter McManus, which is kind of the old hangout when we were at the Flatiron. So it's at 6th Avenue and 22nd Street.
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize that was the bar, but
Yeah.
of course I know the place. Wow, I didn't even notice that.
I always loved seeing that in this film because what was interesting about that place is we would go there, but it was like 3 blocks from UCB, the original UCB theater. So all of those improv people would come into the bar and just be improv people like all night. It was irritating, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say that sounds both good and bad. Yeah,
yeah.
I can see that.
But I always like seeing that show up in this film.
But I'm glad you mentioned that scene though, because it is a perfect example of the movie being hit or miss in some ways. I mean, depending on your mileage, that scene is either genius or completely unnecessary. There's really no reason for it at all, other than to showcase Will Ferrell singing and just another absurd element to his character, which you don't even need. but I wouldn't say I don't like it, but it really is pointless.
I think there are a few of those in this. I think the dirty Mike thing is kind of a running gag that is just
Dirty Mike
an
and the
excuse
boys, yeah.
for Adam McKay to get in the film because he's Dirty
Yeah.
Mike. But I don't know that you need that. I mean, sometimes it's like one joke too many. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but
Well,
it can get
I would
exhausting.
say that to me the most unnecessary thing is the whole Gator subplot, which may just be because I started watching this when I watched this. I was watching with my 10-year-old and was not expecting there to be a whole pimp subplot. I did not see that coming, so that's on me, maybe, but it does feel a bit unnecessary.
I kind of love it. When I watch it with Laura, she just, it's like her favorite thing. The line "Gators bitches better be using jimmies" is like her favorite thing.
Yeah, man, that was I had to
Not
catch
good for
that
a
one
child.
mid sentence and try to skip that one. That was not.
Yeah,
But again, that may just be poor parenting on my part, but that's fine.
that might be a prequel worth exploring. I mean, I don't think you could do it with Will Ferrell at this point because he's like 55. But yeah, I don't know. Let's talk a little bit more about the cast because there are a lot of people in this, and then we'll move
A
on
lot of
to
people in this cast. Yeah.
you have your Steve Coogan. What's your take on Coogan? I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan either. I really did like him in this movie though, but overall, yeah, he's not really my I was gonna say cup of tea, but I hate that phrase, so it's not really my style. We'll say.
Have you seen the Trip movies, the Michael Winterbottom
Yeah,
directed
that's what I
ones?
mean. Really that's not really for me. I don't know. It just doesn't really.
They're really good.
I think they're fine.
I don't really
I
like them at
don't.
all, but yeah.
They're pretty good to me. I don't love them, but I don't hate them. I'm just neutral about
Maybe,
them. Sorry.
did you ever see the Alan Partridge stuff that he did? That's kind of a big character. He's like a talk show host.
Yeah,
Uh,
only sparingly. Only sparingly.
yeah. I don't seek him out because I don't know. I don't know if it's the Britishness or I don't know what it is about him, but there's something that doesn't jive with me. But I think the things that I don't like about him make him a good villain in this. I mean, he's almost affable, but he's still a bad guy, and there's no reason like really not to like him, I guess. But that makes for a good villain. Got to talk about Eva Mendes. That's another connection, the wife of Ryan Gosling. So
Exactly.
um, kind of stealing scenes here with an incredibly absurd subplot that is just I can't even think about that being on the page. I mean, all of the elements of their dynamic, her and Will Ferrell, are completely ridiculous
Yeah, once
and
again, kind
just
of the
fun.
genius of this movie, casting someone like Eva Mendes, who you would not think, almost like Gosling, where they're both, where first time you see them in comedies, you're shocked at how funny they actually are. Like you didn't necessarily expect something like this from Eva Mendes, but she's totally game and has some really memorable lines that she really delivers with all the gusto you could hope for.
Yeah, it really like the straight man, the straight woman for sure. It just playing straight some of the things that Will Ferrell talks about. It that takes skill. I can imagine there are a lot of cutting room floor scenes with her just breaking up all the time. I mean, how do you not?
Yeah, I
Talking
think
about how they
discussing
met.
that she's got mail has a poison ivy in the anus scene and probably alone must take in a full day to get through. But
They have that same meeting story like everybody has, where she was a Lakers girl or a Knicks girl finishing her doctorate. That's so funny. Gotta talk about Ray Stevenson really quickly. I mean, he's very Statham-esque to me, but he's Statham-esque in a way that he's like serious Statham. You put him in a comedy, he's not really funny as the straight guy. He's just serious and always kind of playing that part and really just no nonsense. And I always love seeing him as the guy probably doesn't have a funny bone in his body. So it's great to see him. I think he's cast perfectly as the sort of secondary heavy here. Uh, Gotta talk about Michael Keaton.
Yeah, we
Captain
definitely do.
Gene, brilliant, pure
Yeah,
brilliance.
I love this movie just for that reason alone. That it's a nice reminder in people like us who remember. I mean, the classic Michael Keaton comedies of the '80s, just how funny he really was. Clearly, he's known more now for being Batman, but also being a serious actor, which is well deserved. I mean, I still think he deserved the Academy Award for Birdman, which I just rewatched a couple of weeks ago, but we won't even get into that. Uh, yeah, it's nice to remember how funny he is, and you can put someone like Michael Keaton into this and know that he is an improvise. He can hold his own improvising with anybody, and that's a skill that he's always had. So it's nice to see him flex those muscles again. I think everything about the Bed Bath and Beyond scene is pretty much ad libbed. Either McKay or him are coming up with lines in the moment as they're doing that scene, and yeah, he just handles that particularly well.
One of the greatest examples of just kind of like a cherry on top of how funny this is this running TLC gag that Captain Gene, Michael Keaton's character, has. He's constantly quoting TLC, and the way he plays it, you don't know whether he knows it or not. I mean, that's what's so great about it. But the fact that it's like meta in that you're thinking, well, does he know or does he has to know? And then Will Ferrell is even Mark Wahlberg's character is like, come on, you can't say creep creep and not be referencing TLC. So that and the desk pop thing that they keep saying throughout, I also really love. There's like an apartment pop. So there are these just there's what's written on the page, I assume. I don't know what's improvised and what's not, but those things that kind of carry on throughout are just really nice little touches that make this continue to be funny, even as I think the story sort of goes off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, you just cast it with funny people and you just let them go. I mean, Zoe Lister Jones has a random 2-minute part as the shooting therapist in the room, and then you see Bobby Cannavale, who has a random small role, and yeah, so it's just populated with a bunch of really strong actors who I think are just having the time of their lives. But we've talked about Rob Riggle and Damon Wayans Jr., who play the other two cops who are trying to step up after the main guys die. And two really funny guys. I've always been a huge fan of Damon Wayans Jr. I think he's very funny. He's still trying to get a sitcom off the ground that will last more than a season. But I think eventually he will find something.
Yeah, I mean, he was on the New Girl for a long time, but kind of came in and left and then came back, and so maybe that lasted because of his absence. I don't know. I just designed a book about the New Girl, so I will read it and explain that for you.
I love the New Girl. That was a really funny show. But so Rob Riggle is also great, and you can tell he's more than game for the ad libbing that you need for this movie.
Oh yeah.
But so we have to talk about Sam Jackson and Dwayne Johnson, who really, I mean, it's a huge get for the movie, honestly, to be able to get the two of them to play the two main cops.
I'm not surprised by Sam Jackson, but I am surprised by Dwayne Johnson. Sam Jackson's in everything, but
that's fair.
To get The Rock in there, yeah, especially in this time, that's a big get.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if at this point had he even done Jumanji or anything at this point. This is pretty early on, isn't it?
Yeah, he was not Dwayne Johnson that we have now for sure. No. But I think he was still coming up. Maybe taking
He'd done a couple of things. He actually had done a couple of dumb comedies at this point. He was trying to expand. I mean, he did The Game Plan and that part in Get Smart. And he made The Tooth Fairy, which is better off not being talked about. So he was still kind of trying to find his way, but yeah, casting him and Sam Jackson together ends up working really well.
Then the next year he's in Fast Five, and that's when I think it really just kind of like takes off for him.
It's always a little jarring to go back and watch these earlier Dwayne Johnson movies when you realize he just looked like a super jacked regular human, as opposed to now where he looks like a cartoonish monster. I don't even know what to say. Like, it's almost amazing how much bigger he is now in his 50s than he was in his 30s. It's shocking.
Was he still wrestling in 2010?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was, or he was in the tail end of it.
That's probably where his focus was then. I mean, must be a transition period where he's moving from that to all of the film stuff, because this is really the last year where maybe this
Yeah,
is the
or
film
he
that
had
kind of.
just retired, maybe, because I know he was wrestling all the way up to like the late 2000, like 2007, 2008, maybe 2009. So either he was still doing it or he had basically just walked away.
He didn't get that contract that Hulk Hogan had from Vince McMahon that had him wrestling until he was like 85 or something.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. I mean, they wrestled at a WrestleMania at some point around this period of time.
Jesus.
And I can't remember if it was pre or post this year. Uh, I can't remember, but yeah. And even if I knew,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't say it because I don't want you to think that I know that much about random WrestleMania cards. So I would probably just keep that to myself.
Fair enough. Yeah, those two are great in this. I think they're perfectly cast as Danson and Highsmith. I mean, they're just full of bravado to the point where it's so comical. Well, obviously, they jump off a building.
But that's the question.
With no
Here's the
second
question for
thought.
you. That's what's great about the movie, because when they do it, don't you honestly think that they're going to make it? Like, it's set up where you actually don't even, by that point, you believe that they will jump off the building
Yeah.
and they will tuck and roll and that will be fine.
Right. Well,
Oh,
that's the nice zag that McKay puts in there. I mean, that's
right.
like the inciting incident for these guys, which I think is very smart. That's a really interesting way to do it. Let's see. Ice-T does the voiceover, which is really
Randomly, yeah.
kind of
So,
masterful.
just jumping back
to
though,
get.
I will say that the building jump scene, I think that my youngest son laughed about that scene for like a full week. Like he was just thinking about it and laughing about it like a full week straight. Because again, you just don't expect that at all. You know, you've been conditioned to think that the heroes will always survive. He thinks that is the funniest thing he had ever seen.
It's really hilarious. Yeah, I love that scene. And again, just such a smart way to move the story forward and get those, those minor leaguers called up to the bigs. Uh, one thing I want to talk about really quickly, because we have to move on to the other film, but both of these films are very specifically set and filmed in New York and Los Angeles. And I think the cities are represented really well. And that's something that they have in common that I really love. But this film, the geography is all over the place. I mean, if you're not from New York or live in New York, you're not going to know this. But really, if you watch the way they move around the city, it's completely ridiculous. And the Nice Guys feels a little more realistic in how they get around. So I just wanted to point that out. But I do like that both of them are set and filmed in. I mean, the Nice Guys is some of it's filmed in Georgia, but the representation of the cities is, they're in New York City.
But
you don't.
also, it doesn't get more New York than shooting Derek Jeter. So that, I mean, that
Yeah.
alone.
Yankee
That's
Clipper.
a great little subplot where they call him the Yankee Clipper, which I just think is that's a really funny line.
Yeah. Yankee Clipper and Paper Bitch.
Right.
That's their names. All right. You want to run down your strengths and weaknesses for this film, and then we'll move on to the Nice Guys.
Yeah. Strengths are obviously I mean, just about the entire cast is a strength, honestly. But as in most movies, especially a buddy cop movie, you have to get the lead actors right. And all of the pairings of lead actors or lead-ish actors between Sam Jackson and Dwayne Johnson, Rob Riggle and Damon Wayans Jr., and Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, just the pairings of this movie are fantastic. So that alone keeps it afloat. As I said, I do think the strength of kind of putting these two completely disparate plots together, we're just an absurdist action comedy with a sophisticated high-tech swindle scam. It is really hard to do. Like the bar is it's a high bar to clear to make it work. And I think it does an 80% job of making it work.
It just occurred to me that it's almost like entrapment, where they start off with this physical heist and then they move to the digital stuff, and it doesn't work as well at the end.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, Good point. But bringing it in, I mean, having it end up being the I do like the fact that they have the one minor character who annoys everybody, but turns out being the key person who's about
Yeah.
to lose the pension
Bob.
fund. Like yeah, they actually bring all of that around,
Yeah.
which is fun. But yeah, the 20% that doesn't work is obviously the weakness. But I have to say, as someone who's actively been trying to find comedies to watch with the family because they're just there's too much. You can only watch so many dramas and action movies, particularly action movies. Um, Most comedies only work. You're lucky if a comedy works 70% of the time. Most comedies work barely 50% of the time, and half of it sucks. So, and I found that more and more as I go back and rewatch things and try to find new comedies. It's rare. So just the fact that this works maybe 80% of the time is is like an A plus. It works way more than it doesn't work, and that's amazing in and of itself. The 20% that doesn't work, some of it painfully doesn't work, or it's just so off the rails where it's borderline nuts. But again, what can you expect for when you put Adam McKay and Will Ferrell together? You can get a lot of craziness. But this one is one of my favorites. I think I like this pairing even more than I like Anchorman. So that's saying something.
I agree with all of that. I think there are so many strengths to this film. The chemistry is undeniable. I like how it shifts the buddy cop structure and moves it from the heroes to the other guys, like where the title comes from. I think that's just very, very clever. And I love the swing McKay takes for the corporate greed element of it, and kind of the hero worship that sort of loses its luster at the beginning. But the real weakness for me is just how that's executed. Like I said, that it falls apart when it gets more into the corporate stuff. I mean, I actually had a hard time sort of following along with a lot of the beats of it and the story. And I think if you have like an infographic at the end that kind of has to explain what you just watched, that sort of puts a bit of a ding on it for me, because I got it for the most part, but it wasn't until I watched that I was like, oh, I see what they were doing here.
I think that's
And
fair. But I would say two things. I mean, one, I think that shows you why this kind of corporate crime is so much easier to do because it's so hard to understand. And so, and it also makes me appreciate The Big Short even more because I think anyone looking to kind of understand how this stuff really works in The Big Short is an excellent primer on that. It goes down really easily and gives you a lot of information in a way it's not very dry. He's starting here and he's trying to give you something, but it's still a little bit confusing. And I think by the time he gets to The Big Short, he really puts together how to give this information to you in a way that makes sense. But you're right; it's hard to follow because it's hard to follow. Again, is why it's so. It's such a. See, I was about to use the word dastardly. I'm using like old words from the 50s. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just such a dastardly crime because it is so hard to even understand what the hell these people are doing.
I think The Big Short is almost like the other side, like the David Ershon story, like the stuff he's doing. I know there are everyday people in it too, but even that is so dense that they literally have to have Margot Robbie and Anthony Bourdain in the middle of the movie, like explain it to you. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's easy to get away with because nobody understands what you're doing. So if you're smart enough, I mean, we can get into like how this has grown and people who are in the middle of this right now, but that's the thing is like
Also,
in
why crypto works. If anyone ever sits and explains crypto
right.
to you, you're like this doesn't make any actual sense. Like I don't understand it, and it makes it easy to use as a tool to do whatever you want with it because it literally makes no sense.
This kind of ambiguous crime that comes from something like crypto or these Ponzi schemes or anything like Lehman Brothers or anybody else is doing. has become so rampant now. And I mean, they do a great job in the infographic showing you like the TARP bailouts and how this Lendl Global was too big to fail. I mean, there's really a lot of anger in this film, and with good reason. And you're going to see that again in The Nice Guys a little bit, sort of like almost at the last minute, and not to the same degree. But I appreciate that passion that McKay has for this and how he's gone on to sort of make that his brand. I mean, Succession is one of the biggest shows on HBO ever, and that's all about this stuff. I think he's really honed that message and found some great vehicles to deliver it. So yeah, this is an interesting first attempt at that, and you can really see where he's going. And I always like where he's going, whether it works or not. I mean, we talk about Don't Look
Yeah.
Up, and
how's this for a segue? So we have here is the start of Adam McKay finding his voice, and really what you have in The Nice Guys is a movie where an artist has perfected their voice. It is the culmination of all Shane Black movies to me. It is kind of the perfect Shane Blackiest Shane Black.
100%. That's a great segue. Let me give you a quick overview of it. Got it. So here it is. In the 1970s in Los Angeles, a mismatched pair, again with a mismatched pair, of private eyes investigates a missing girl and the mysterious death of a porn star. Again, very simplified, but you're seeing exactly the same wording there as you saw with the other guys, a mismatched pair. And I think that dynamic is what makes both of these films really good. I mean, that tension and the sort of coming together is what's compelling about it.
Yeah, like every few years, Shane Black needs to come back and remind you and try to take the title back of buddy cop movie, because other people keep trying to do it, and then he'll return and remind you that he's kind of been the father of the great buddy cop movie since the 80s.
And with this, it feels like an extension, of course, of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in particular, but it's almost like more of a parody of that kind of crime noir buddy thing than Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was.
But that one is too. I mean, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in a lot of ways is an inversion, because you basically have an actor, pretending to be something dragged into a world. So
yeah,
it's all very meta. This one I would actually argue is less meta than that one, but you're right. So it's the thing. So both of these movies are based on, or they drew inspiration from an author named Brett Halliday, who was an old noir writer that supposedly Shane Black was a huge fan of. So he used to write mysteries and westerns. It's interesting how a lot of mystery writers also wrote westerns, but it doesn't even matter. But that's the author that he has always loved since he was a kid. And both Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and this are based on stories that Brett Halliday had written.
Okay. Kind of inspired by, right? Because I don't
by, yeah, exactly.
Writing credits. Yeah. Yeah. But this feels like really Chinatown to me, where you have this unassuming investigator sort of activated by someone to find somebody, turns into this big corporate thing, and set in Los Angeles. I mean, what better place to set something like this? And I think what Shane Black does in setting it in 1977, I think it is that, I mean, that really adds such an incredible element to this. He really nails the period. And I think having it set in that period makes it far more interesting than if it were in the 80s.
And so I'm sure you know this, that this has gone through a few iterations, that they originally written the screenplay, but made it modern and it didn't get bought. And they tried to turn it into a TV show. Once Joel Silver gets involved, who worked with Shane Black as far back as Lethal Weapon, so they have a history together, and he produced Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. After Sherlock Holmes, strangely enough, was a success, that's what convinced Joel Silver to actually make this a period piece instead of making it modern. And it makes all the difference. I mean, making this a movie in 77 makes it work infinitely better than if it was a modern.
Yeah. Well, it's about communication. I mean, there were noir films like post 2000, but the technology is so available that I always think about things like that we saw as kids, or like even like there's a whole episode of Beverly Hills 90210 where they can't get information to each other because there's no phone, and like it, that is such a great thing to move plot forward pre cell phone. So yeah, setting this in modern day, I mean, there would be so much of the ambiguity to it or the mystery around it that would just be, not there.
Yeah, and it allows
And
you to focus on two aspects which are really 70s related, which is cars and the power of car companies in the 70s and the porn industry, which was also huge in the 70s. So it allows you to play off of those two elements.
I assume you didn't watch this one with the family.
I actually watched this with my older son,
Okay.
and surprisingly, but not surprisingly, he really, really enjoyed this movie. I was always wondering at some point if he would just get up and leave because I was watching it late at night, and sometimes he'll sit down and start watching a movie with me and then bail after a few minutes because for whatever the reason is. He would have bailed on Shelter if we weren't in the movie theater. That's why I made him watch it in the movie theater. But
So he
yeah, he
redeemed
sat.
himself as your son with this.
Yeah, exactly. So he sat and he really loved it. And I really believe this. I don't know how anyone doesn't like this movie. I really don't. I mean, maybe the porn industry thing might turn a few people off, and I get that to a certain extent. But this is everything I like about movies. So maybe it just me. This is 100% my wheelhouse, and I cannot understand how people don't enjoy this movie. It's the same way I feel about The Big Lebowski. Maybe because I just enjoy detective stories, and I think telling a detective story, which is one of the most classic of all stories, but wrapping it up in a package in a fully realized world, which is entertaining, to me is as good as movies get. I don't know. So it's just kind of baffling to me that anyone would think this isn't an entertaining movie.
Actually, The Big Lebowski is something I thought about a lot as I watched this. I mean, there's perhaps a matchup that might have even been better because they're so similar. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason this type of story sticks around, in all the different iterations of what we've seen from the 40s forward. It's still something that gets made. I mean, look at what Ryan Johnson's doing. This kind of mystery crime film it's just like the bread and butter of Hollywood, and it's timeless, and you can put whatever the contemporary skin is on it, and it's always going to work.
Right.
And
A good detective story with a good mismatched pair with snappy dialogue will never not be a good movie. If you do it right, those elements mixed together will always make a quality film. It's the same reason that The Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy works. It's the same reason Spy worked. It's the same, like it doesn't really matter. If you have those three things and you have a good pairing of actors and let it roll, you've got a good movie. Whether or not people go and see that good movie, and we'll bitch about that later, remains to be seen. But it will be a quality movie if you get those elements right.
And I think the level of success with those elements depend on what the director does with it. And here you have a co-writer director, Shane Black, who has, like we've said, sort of just perfected this over the years. And I'm really just blown away by this script. I think it's so meticulous and there's so much to it. Like it like drips with detail, and the world that he creates is I just think it's beautifully directed from the writing to the production design, and specifically to the performances, because at the center of it are these two amazing actors who play very different roles. I mean, this is a clear straight man and Russell Crowe. Right. I mean, he's not bringing any of that Wahlberg energy. He's just Russell Crowe. But you have Ryan Gosling just going like berserk on the other side. And I think I'm with you. It's really shocking that more people don't like this movie, because on paper and on screen, it really has just so many good elements. I think the only thing that might kind of put people off is it gets a little like in the weeds with some of the stuff. It also, for me, gets a little hard to follow at some points. And
it never feels slow either. I mean, this is
no,
a
not
2-hour
at
movie.
all.
Does it ever feel like it's dragging? Never. So even in the moments where you may not 100% understand it, it's continuing to move. It's propelling forward at a clip where it's never not entertaining. And sure, some of the weedier stuff, but I would say that it has, the attention to detail. It has as much attention to detail about the porn industry as Boogie Nights, but also has like the attention to detail of what a detective story is, as well as what Ryan Johnson is doing with Knives Out. So it's like it, it really just nails all of those elements as well. There's someone
Yeah,
doing something that they do really well at the top of their form.
it really is a complete package. I mean, I watched it this time with a memory of it that I thought it was fine and I enjoyed it. And I know it's become like a really big cult hit. You know, not a lot of people have seen it, but the people who have seen it love it. And I get it now. I mean, I sat down with sort of a more critical eye and also a newfound like undying love for Ryan Gosling. So that really helps. There's just so in thinking about Shane Black's other films, you know, you can. I thought about Lethal Weapon a lot, of course, because that's really two mismatched guys who kind of come together at the end, and the tone is similar. But I really just am blown away by the just how solid this film is across the board. It's really quite impressive. So I'm saddened that a lot of more people haven't seen it, but you know,
Yeah,
you got to be
it was
cool to
kind
look
of
at
like the
this.
last shot that Shane Black had of really solidifying his place. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was successful enough where Joel Silver gives him another shot. He makes this, and there were high hopes for this movie, and you can easily see how there might have been sequels. And because it wasn't successful enough, it didn't happen. And I have to admit that there are actually days where I think about that and become furious that we didn't get more Nice Guys movies. Honestly, like it drives me crazy to think about all the garbage sequels that we've had in the past decade and we couldn't get another one of these is just a Hollywood crime in my opinion. It really is. It just
Well,
infuriates me.
I could easily see this as a TV show now. I mean, I think about Poker
And Ryan
Face in
Gosling
particular.
and Russell Crowe still talk about it. They actually still talk amongst themselves about coming back to this. Yeah, has like HBO series written all over it. You could go back and make this now, and that would work.
Put these guys in True Detective season 5. I mean,
Right.
there you go.
Yeah, that
I
would be the
think,
shot in the arm that needs.
uh, and you were just talking about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and what I started thinking about is the this is like a film for film people, whereas the other guys is a film for the masses. And in particular, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, some of the clips we've posted about our episode on that, which everybody should go back and listen to, is some of the most engaging stuff that we have on social media, because the people who are looking at film talk or their algorithm is about film, they love that movie, and I bet they love this movie too. In fact, I know they do, because when we talk about the voting on this, I mean, we got more votes than we've ever received. So I think people really who are into film are into this film, and I'm okay with that. Like, I kind of like being in the club that
Yeah, I don't mind being a film nerd. Jesus, we're doing
yeah,
a podcast about it. So it's like
right.
obviously that is we are fine with that. But I will say I do think Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was definitely more of a movie for movie buffs. It's a very meta movie about making movies where the Nice Guys, to me, it's less that. It's just more of a straight detective movie, set in LA. So of course there's movie elements of it, but there's the porn side of it. But I think it's more of a complete movie in that way. I think it is more for the masses than something like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is a very meta movie would be. But maybe I'm wrong because it didn't play out that way. But yeah, I think this is more of a throwback. You're right, more of a Chinatown throwback kind of movie. That's more about a particular world in a particular period of time than it is kind of a meta recitation on particular people in a particular movie genre.
Right. And it does follow that structure where the other guys kind of veers off into like I said, the players being called up from the minor leagues or whatever. This is very straightforward in its detective work and two just two detectives who come together. So it's familiar in that way, and it really just carries that tradition. Why don't we talk about the actors, because just great performances across the board. You know, I like I've said, Ryan Gosling, he's won me over in the past couple weeks. In fact, I watched a lot of Ryan Gosling films this week and even had a dream about him last night. I don't know if I want to admit that or not, but he's just won me over, and I don't know what it is about right now. I've been aware of his work. I think just in the films we've done so far, we did Crazy Stupid Love last week. We did The Fall Guy when it came out back last year, and now doing this, and we're going to do Project Hail Mary in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I think
And don't
those
forget,
films.
Ryan Gosling also has a cameo, a small part in The Big Short. If you remember,
That's right.
the small part
Yeah.
in that. But think about his 2016. He makes The Nice Guys and La La Land in 2016. Oh, I mean, this is Ryan Gosling really coming into his own, showing you everything that he can do: comedy, action, song and dance man. You know, the whole deal.
Well, I think those sides of him are not what I think about when I think of him. I think of Half Nelson or Blade Runner, or I just haven't done a deep enough dive on him. But in watching the comedy, and I've seen him on SNL, and I thought he was pretty funny, but I don't know what it is. I don't for some reason I had an aversion to him, but I've just like bought all the stock in the last 2 weeks, and in this film, he kind of goes the other direction from what we see in Crazy Stupid Love, where it's just he's a little absurd in that as sort of a straight man to let Carell do his thing. But in this, he's the one who's doing the physical comedy quite masterfully, I will say. The bathroom stall scene in particular is like just the timing and the physicality of what he does is really surprising to me, and I'm here for it. I love it so much. And
So for me, my favorite, there's a lot of scenes that Gosling has in this movie that I really love. Uh, I love in the elevator, after they go up the elevator and see all the mayhem and they get back in the elevator. His eye is twitching a little bit.
yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, like that little thing. But for me, the best scene is when he discovers the body of Sid March, who, by the
yeah,
way, everybody on the internet believes that's Robert Downey Jr., who was doing a favor to Shane Black.
really
Yeah, that he's
interesting.
actually that body.
Huh.
And if you look at it, it actually does look like him. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know for sure if it's him or not. But they're close, and you may ask him to do a favor. It's certainly possible. But that scene, when I saw that scene, I instantly knew. And they said that this was ad-libbed on his part, that he was doing Lou Costello. That he was basically doing an imitation of Lou Costello.
Yeah.
And I saw it instantly. And then I went, down the rabbit hole later on and found out that, yeah, that's what they talked about. He kind of ad-libbed that on the spot and was, he said he was inspired by Lou Costello. I was like, yeah, I know. Like, he's the only person that actually used to do that. But it's so great. It is so funny and perfect and a nice little tribute and throwback moment, but something only a few actors can pull off. And it's wonderful. It makes me laugh out loud. It's so good.
I think that's what makes him such a good fit for Shane Black, because that's something I feel like Shane Black would do as a writer, like put a tribute to somebody, not obscure, but somebody from the past who, and I guess he does that a lot with the way he writes. But yeah, I mean, it's that attention to detail that Gosling brings to it, that Shane Black brings to it. I don't know if Russell Crowe necessarily needs to have that in his character. I don't see as much of that for him,
No,
but
he's more of a blunt
he's
instrument, and that's fine.
yeah, he's very much like the Ray Stevenson character in the other guys in a way, but with a little more comedy. I mean, I can't think of a Russell Crowe comedy, but I can think of him being funny in a few things. But I've never seen him do a straight comedy that I can remember off the top of my head. So I think the two of them, the chemistry is off the charts again, just like in the other guys. So that goes a long way. And Uh, I also really want to talk about Angourie Rice, who plays Holly,
Yeah.
kind of the
So think
moral
about
center of the
this.
film.
Everybody seems to think that Tarantino discovered Margaret Qualley as well because people remember her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But yes, this was basically her first real movie. They basically discover Margaret Qualley. She'd only been doing The Leftovers up to this point. Like that was what she'd worked on before this. And Angry Rice, I think this is either her first or second movie as well. So they discover these two wonderful young actresses who have now gone on to have pretty strong careers. So, even that, and they're both wonderful in this movie.
I think Angry Rice just is like beyond her years here. I mean, to hold her own and to almost steal scenes from Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe is just really fun to watch. And I love the idea of a little kid kind of having to be the center between these two guys. And really, she's like the secret sauce. I mean, she's the one who sort of reins them in and does a lot of the detective work, essentially.
Yeah, right.
So I would really love to see more of I would like to see her on that ad at the end where Russell Crowe, they say, looks Filipino. Make her the third nice guy. I think that would be really good. You mentioned Margaret Qualley. She's great. I mean, she's, you know, doing what Margaret Qualley does here, and I'd
Right.
forgotten
Yeah,
she
you
was in
see a
this.
lot of stuff in this movie of what we're going to see from her later, which she's only perfecting as she goes on. And she ends up in her own little noirish detective movies, like with Drive Away Dolls and Honey Don't, where she plays her own version of a.
Yeah,
I'm not saying those are great movies. I'm just saying that she, takes a little bit of this into that,
yeah.
for
You
better or
know,
worse.
the Cohen brothers, one of those teams that works better as a duo. I mean, there's some great supporting cast in this from Keith David,
Yeah, I mean, when you
who
have Keith David in
I,
something, you've already up the ante. You're going to get a 2% better movie. I'm going to sell. I'm sure you get a 10% better movie if Keith David isn't involved.
I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but he narrates a lot of documentaries, like specifically Ken Burns stuff.
Well, I could see
And he
that.
puts my wife to sleep in like a second. Like anytime she hears Keith David, it's like conditioning now. She's just out because he
So I
narrates
started
these long
listening.
things.
I started listening to audiobooks sometimes, like as I go to sleep. Certain ones, and yeah, I think that Keith David should just narrate more audiobooks, and then I could use them to go to sleep because that would be nice.
He just has that voice. I mean, you don't really get it as much in this film, but he's still bringing it. Matt Bomer as John Boy, which I think is just another great script touch to have this guy look like Henry Thomas. Or is it
Right.
Henry Thomas? No, not Henry
No, Henry
Thomas.
Thomas is the kid from
Richard
ET.
Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Thomas. To have him look like Richard Thomas, I think, is just such a funny touch. And I didn't even see the mole at first. I was like, why do they call him John Boy? Yeah, I love Matt Bomer. I think he's kind of underutilized a lot of the time because he
I
looks so
completely agree.
handsome and
Yeah.
yeah. But he does a great job here. The character of Chet, the projectionalist, as he calls himself, that's Jack Kilmer, Val Kilmer's son, which I
Is
think
it
is
really? I didn't know that.
yeah. I think that's a nice touch from Shane Black to put
Yeah, I
Val
agree.
Kilmer's son in this. I the guy at the end was Gil Gerard, who turns out to be the big bad guy, right? The guy from the Detroit Motor Company who
Right.
looks like John Voight's character in Heat. Again, we're referencing Heat, but that's Buck Rogers. That blows my mind. We need
That's
more
a
of that guy in this movie. I
that's
mean,
a
Gil
nice little
Gerard should
touch.
not have a cameo.
Yeah. And of course, we talk about Kim Basinger, and for those of us who like movies, I mean, so does Shane Black. That is really why he cast her. He cast her as a nice little meta thing for those of us who love LA Confidential, another hard-boiled detective movie kind of set in LA. So having Russell Crowe and Kim Basinger reunite in this movie is a nice little meta moment for movie nerds. And it's always fun to see them together. So that was great.
Yeah, it is great. We talked about the directing a little bit, but I just want to point out that I think Shane Black I don't know how much improvisation there is in this. Maybe you have seen behind the scenes or cut scenes or something, but it feels very much on the page, unlike the other guys. And it feels because there's so much detail to it, it feels very meticulous to me. But at the same time, I think the directing in the scenes feels very loose and kind of free with the acting. So I kind of like that it seems like Shane Black is a very tight writer, but a very loose director because what's on the page is going to inform, what the performance is. But I think allowing a lot of these jokes feel like they have to be just kind of in the moment. Like, I think about, you know, it was probably a different writer back then, but I think about Mel Gibson's performance in Lethal Weapon. Like how much of that was improvisational and how much was on the page, I don't know, but he was given the freedom to just like let it fly with that character. And I think that there's a lot of that in this film that I really enjoy. And I think that really lets, especially Ryan Gosling, just kind of do his thing. It's a home run. Great writing and great directing.
Yeah. I think what a,
An
like you said,
incredible
I think what
film.
a good director does is they create an environment that allows people to play within a tightly controlled world that they create. And it gives you the structure to play within. So it never feels like it's out of control, but allows you a little bit of freedom to play with your scenes. And I think that that's what I was going to say in terms of only thing I know from some of the improvisation or stuff off the page in this one is, yeah, I mean, Gosling has a few moments that are supposedly ad-libbed or that they came up with as they were shooting, but not that much from what I read.
It seems that way. I mean, he's such a good writer that why would you want to veer away from that? And Adam McKay feels like more of a collaborative writer with Will Ferrell, so it makes sense that they would sort of, he comes from that environment where they're writing, sketches under this pressure cooker of a time frame for SNL. So it's more about like letting it fly, and this feels like very measured. But again, that looseness inside of that measuring is what I think makes this just beautifully made. Do you have anything else you wanted to mention about this before we talk about the strengths and weaknesses of it? I know you're a big fan, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about this movie, but yeah, as you said, I do think that it's worth mentioning. We were talking about the corporate greed angle of it, and I think it, yeah, I mean, the catalytic converter thing is a very obscure point, but a very big deal in the 70s. You had the oil crises going on, but this idea of dealing with the smog of LA and forcing car companies to kind of deal with the pollution. I'm not going to lie that I was watching this movie now and thinking that we may very well be returning to the days of smog in LA based on the way things are going. But
Yeah,
I can't help but have had that thought as I was watching it. But yeah,
sure.
and again, it's hard for us to remember how much power the car companies had as well back in the 70s. So it was a nice little history lesson of really what was going on back then, how they controlled. I mean, so many people work for those companies, and they controlled a lot of the the business environment of hiring workers, and really they made the stock market go.
It's really interesting to watch this in 2026. I mean, I know it was made, in 2016, but so a lot of this stuff has happened, but some of the things they talk about, like if it's good for Detroit, it's good for America, and just like the power of that city to look at it now as to what happened to it. I mean, it completely decimated. I mean, it's sort of rebuilding now, but that car industry is never going to be the same. Ryan Gosling alludes to it at the end where he says in 10 years, we're all probably going to drive electric cars from Japan. So, there's a bit of like, uh, I don't know what it would be, like historical foreshadowing there, I guess. So, but I think that's for younger people, maybe they don't understand that as clearly what a powerhouse
Right.
Detroit used to be. So
Yeah, I
maybe
think
that's a
to a
turnoff, but
younger audience member, I don't think they would understand how powerful Detroit and also how big the porn industry was in the 70s. Those are two
Yeah.
things that were really huge. I mean, the
Yeah.
porn industry almost had full legitimacy where you could go see porn movies in theaters on screens and they made money. It was a weird time. So, yeah, it's very much a throwback history lesson about a very particular period of time and what was going on. And if you want to go
And
down those rabbit holes, it certainly opens a couple of doors for you where you could go in them and really get lost in the history of those things.
yeah, the 70s were nuts. I mean, I really love that's another thing is sort of the production details of this film where the party, you know, the living statues that they kept putting drinks on and like, you know, I know that's sort of like an elevated example of that because it was at this porn mogul's house, but you know, that's the kind of stuff that would have happened back then, probably at a club in New York or, you know, just in general. And it was just such a wild time. I mean, it really, uh, I think in the context of film, you know, we have New Hollywood where everything that came before it with the Hays Code and everything sort of went out the window and it was like a free for all. And I think the culture in general was like that before Reagan came in and sort of put the reins on everything. So uh, yeah, this is a great example of just life in that moment on film that is just so representative of the freedoms of the late 70s. So just so much fun and so smart. Um, yeah.
Fun.
So
That's the thing. It's a fun movie.
there are obviously a lot of strengths about this. Does anything stand out to you that you think is
The whole damn
more of a
thing.
strength than
I
anything
enjoy
else?
it the
Yeah.
whole time. I enjoy
Yeah.
everything about the movie. I enjoy it. Like I said, I think it's one of my top movies. I enjoy the hell out of watching it. So the strengths are almost everything. The only negative I have about it, and it's a plus and a minus, is the Earth, Wind, and Fire part in the movie,
Yeah. At
which
the
is
party.
awesome, and the costumes are very spot on because I have a video, a VHS tape of a Earth, Wind, and Fire concert from 1980, which I used to watch all the time when I was a kid. And
I thought
that
you
is
were going to
exactly
say you had an
no,
Earth, Wind, and Fire costume.
I wasn't that cool, but yeah. So I used to watch this all the time, and that is actually how they used to dress in concert. They had these great costumes, but I do not think Earth, Wind, and Fire will be playing a porn party. By the way, so that's my
I was
only
wondering about
negative. I
that.
just don't. I don't see that. That would be very out of character for that band. But I mean, I love throwing him in as a little period touch, so I can't really complain.
I mean, it's one small mark against the film, right? For me, there are so many strengths. The world building is incredible. I just think they do such a great job, like I said, of representing the time. Angry Rice, exceptional. The chemistry, the acting, all of it, like you said. I think it's a particularly great mashup of genres that keeps its tone in a way. I mean, the tone moves around a little bit, but it's not in a bad way. I mean, it handles tonal shifts very well. A couple weaknesses for me is that I think the conspiracy is a little convoluted, like toward the end. It again, anytime you move into trying to put some sort of white collar crime on screen, it's hard to do, and it's particularly hard to make compelling.
Yeah,
And
there's a
that,
conspiracy like that.
yeah, I think
I just
that's
thought
the
of
only thing here.
my one possible negative for this movie, which I just remembered. Is John Boy a good assassin? Like, think
Yeah, I
about
was
it.
wondering
He
about that.
goes to the house and is supposed to take out one girl. He ends up wrecking an entire house, pulling a machine gun out of his trunk and just laying waste to a house.
Yeah,
That seems like Jason Statham beekeeper level overreaction to a situation. I'm like,
yeah,
is this guy good at his job? I feel, and he doesn't kill anybody. He's supposed to. Well, he ends up. We won't spoil it, but he ends up getting his job done by accident.
right,
But then
right.
all the other stuff he tries to do, he actually fails at. So I don't. That's my only negative. He's supposed to be like the best at what he does, and he doesn't seem that great at it.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's another great thing that I like about this that I think these dark comedy noirs have is that I think it's okay to spoil it. everybody's looking for this woman. This woman is killed like that. And I think that is when it gets into really the conspiracy stuff. But I think this whole film is spent following this woman who is, I don't know, she's like Bigfoot, right? There are like sightings of her and then she vanishes. But then 3/4 of the film is trying to find her and then she's killed. And then
But
there's
I have to
another quarter of
say,
the film left.
that's also what made me think of The Big Lebowski too, because part of The Big Lebowski is it sets up a giant conspiracy about a particular thing that's a total
Right.
mulligan. It's like completely not important at all, and so it just
I love
throws you off your axis. Which again, it requires a certain level of writing to pull that off and then keep you in the movie. So, I always like those bit of left turns. One thing we forgot to mention though, you watch this whole movie thinking, is this gonna end up taking place during Christmas? Because every Shane Black movie essentially takes place during Christmas, and he shoehorns it in at the end just for us who love Shane Black and know that there has to be Christmas somewhere, and he throws it in the coda in the end.
Yep.
That always makes me laugh when I see that. It's like he knows that we know, and so he makes sure he gets it in there.
And that bar they're in is the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard. It's not there anymore, but whenever we go to LA, we stay in that area. So that's a bar that's very recognizable to me. The one other strength I have about this is just a little touch that I really love is how many things happen in the background behind glass. So at the very beginning, you have this car careening down the hill while this kid is looking at a nudie mag. So you're really disconnected from it. At the party, you have Ryan Gosling swimming with mermaids in that tank behind glass. The whole point of Mrs. Glenn seeing her niece through the window happens through a window. Like there's just so many interesting ways that he tells a story that you're disconnected from through windows that I think is really interesting. So that's a strength for me that I really liked. Um, the other only weakness I have is not enough Gil Gerard. I loved Buck Rogers as a kid, and I really wanted more of him on screen.
I totally get
So,
it.
but that's a minor quibble that I have. All right, let's move on to our head-to-head comparison of these two films. This is going to be more interesting than I thought it was going to be because I went into this thinking The Nice Guys is going to be this great highbrow, like cinematic thing, and The Other Guys is just going to be like populist, slick nonsense. But that's not necessarily how I look at it now. So in if you're comparing these for story effectiveness, what do you think is the winner here?
Yeah, that's closer than I thought, but I think The Nice Guys wins for me just because it is more consistent. Uh, the Other Guys kind of goes off on a couple of tangents just for the fun of it, which is what makes it a fun movie. But in terms of a cohesive story and keeping it all together, I mean, Nice Guys does a better job of staying tightly within its world.
I agree. I think it tells the story in a more understandable way I mean, they both have this conspiracy at the end, but I think The Other Guys kind of gets lost in that a little more. And as I've said a few times, it's hard to put that on screen. So I think it sort of loses its way the farther it gets into that. Also doesn't have that exciting of an ending where they're just like, they're literally, the ending is stopping Chris Gethard, by the way, fellow New Jerseyan who I love, from pushing a button. Like that's the climax of the film, basically. So
We'll say though, in both cases, both movies end anticlimactically because
yeah,
in a way, the people who commit the crimes get away with them.
right. Yeah, that's the message. And I think maybe that's kind of a turnoff to people, at least with The Nice Guys, because the ending, even Russell Crowe, I mean, he's like really put off by it, of course. But that's how it works.
Right.
That's what
Unfortunately,
we're seeing every
that's a
day.
commentary about the world that we live in,
Yeah.
the modern world that we live in. Most of these high crime and conspiracies don't end up getting prosecuted.
I think for me here, The Nice Guys is the better of the two with the story effectiveness because I think the writing, the writing keeps the tone consistent. Like I talked about a little bit before, there are tonal shifts, but they're not jarring. They're not they don't take you out of it the way sometimes that happens in the other guys. So I just think it's a smoother ride, and it's a more like kind of straightforward ride, even though there are twists and turns in it. It feels like you're, staying on the same road and you're not sort of all over the place. Uh, this is a fun one. Characters. Which film is the better characters?
Yeah, that I mean, that's a really, really hard one to
These are
answer.
hard, man.
Um, I I almost think that the Nice Guys has better. The two main characters are better, but the other guys has more characters who are better. Overall, I actually think the cast of the other guys and each one of them has kind of a moment where they get to shine. So I almost think that the other guys wins just by the sheer number of strong actors doing good work in that movie.
Yeah. I liked your point about the chemistry that each of the pairs has because there are several pairs. I think that really sort of tips the scale in the other guy's favor. I mean,
Yeah.
at
You could
central
watch a
to
movie about any of those
yeah,
pairings in the other guys and meanwhile they're all sharing the movie together. So yeah.
yeah. I do like the characters that are in the world that Shane Black built, but they're not as dynamic. I mean, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe are very dynamic together, but everybody else, I feel they feel more peripheral than
Right.
the
That's what I was going to
characters
say.
do in the
That
other
this is
guys.
the Nice Guys is very much a two-hander where everyone else is supporting those two guys. Whereas the other guys, you feel like at any moment someone else is taking the movie. Like any scene where command where Gene is in, you feel like Gene is taking that scene. And
Yeah.
then uh even the scene where they go to visit his ex-girlfriend. Like
Yeah.
the it's like the the people in that scene are kind of own that scene, so it's like everybody gets a moment. I always think about the scene with the where we go to recover the car after Dirty Mike and the boys.
Yeah.
um there's an extended sequence of that which I
Oh,
suggest
wow.
people go and find, where they're just ad-libbing the stuff that's in the car,
Yeah.
which is really, really funny. But even again, I just watched this movie, and this is a new line I just caught where they said there's a mouse in a condom. You're like, wait,
A
what?
baby
Like
mouse? Yeah.
I didn't even hear that the first time. It's like, what? So just those little things that you catch on third and fourth watch.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, the characters, across the board, just really solid in both, but, uh, yeah, in The Nice
Oh,
Guys,
just to interrupt you, in the scene with the car, there's a thing about chiggers, or they talk about chiggers.
really?
This is in the part. Yeah, this is
It
in
was cut
the
out.
cutting room floor. But
Yeah.
yeah, it comes to like more than once, and they're trying to explain what it is. But it's like
Oh
that's
god.
found in the car. So like it's really, really goes out there. Really. Anyway,
Laura had chiggers once. They're, crazy. Yeah. Oh.
yeah. So
So, yeah, I think the character, the category of characters goes to The Nice Guys here, or I'm sorry, to the other guys, but still solid in The Nice Guys. Tone and consistency, kinda talked about this already.
yeah.
You know, it's all over the place in the other guys and pretty solid in the nice guys. I think we can agree that the nice guys, it sort of
We
takes
can
this
absolutely
category.
agree on that. But at the same time, we could agree that having tone and consistency isn't always what you watch a movie for anyway. So
Right?
you don't necessarily go into the other guys thinking, I'm really expecting some tone and consistency from this movie. So I think if you watch it, you pretty much know what you're getting, and that's fine. That's what you're there
Yeah,
for.
yeah. I think the way the tone moves through the other guys makes it feel like just a bunch of scenes in some cases that are sort of like stitched together with interstitial things that maybe aren't as interesting, and that's where the tone shifts are. It's like the the big scenes have a tone, and then the stuff that connects them sort of goes in a different direction sometimes, and that sort of takes you out of it a little bit. All right, last category, cultural staying power and iconic scenes. This is another interesting category to me.
Jesus. This is an almost impossible question to answer
Yeah.
because I mean, The Other Guys was popular and continues to be popular, but The Nice Guys is building a nice cult following, and I feel like every year more people stumble onto it and discover how great it is. It's almost a tie, and if you go kind of on the YouTube or something like that, you'll see there's lots of people still discussing both movies or seeing it for the first time or things about it. So this could be a tie.
I agree completely. I think it is a tie. I think what exactly what you said. The Nice Guys has a building following, and it's not for the same reasons that the other guys sticks around. I think the Other Guys has what McKay's other work has, what Anchorman has, what Step Brothers has, Talladega Nights. I mean, quotability. That's what it is. My brothers-in-law will quote Step Brothers to me like every time they see me. So, that's what that has. I can't think of a lot of lines that I would quote from The Nice Guys, but when I think
I can
about
think
it,
of one.
what is it?
Marriage is buying a house for someone you hate. I just think it's a crazy line.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, so I think they both have their own sort of corners of the culture. So yeah, definitely a tie. Well, that's interesting. I mean, we're sort of right in the middle here almost, but let's figure it out with our questions of the week. We ask 5 questions every week to help figure which way we're going to go on this. So number 1, which film is more rewatchable? Again, this feels like a difficult task.
It really is. So again, I feel like I'm cheating, but I think I did this last week as well. I think that there are scenes of The Other Guys that are more rewatchable. But if I'm going to watch a movie from start to finish, I'm going to watch The Nice Guys in total. I can sit and watch all 2 hours of that and not skip any of it because I enjoy it so much. Whereas The Other Guys, I'm going to watch maybe 45 minutes of it, like consistently, just for certain lines that make me laugh out loud.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this 100%. Again, I think about what I would buy on Blu-ray, and I'm actually like after this conversation, I'm going to go buy The Nice Guys because
I
I'm
looked
thinking
up
about it
the
so
Nice
much.
Guys, a Nice Guys Blu-ray like last night
Uh-huh.
as I was looking at it because the DVD that I rented from the library has no extras or anything, and I was very
Oh,
disappointed by that. So I was trying to see if there was another version that has all that stuff.
is The Nice Guys the film that makes you a physical media collector?
It could. It could do
Wow.
that.
All
Although
right.
I actually recently picked up The Last Boy Scout on physical media. I found like a really
That
cheap DVD of that.
that kind of fits into this
I
conversation in a
know. That's why I
way.
mentioned it.
Yeah.
It's Shane Black's
Interesting.
second movie. It's the second script that he wrote after Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
Well, third, Monster Squad, Lethal Weapon, and then The Last Boy Scout.
Wow, we've done a few of his films on this podcast.
I mean, basically, yeah, there are definitely a few people that are, pod favorites. Shane Black and Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling have now ascended to the top of the mountain. They're on the movie Throwdown pod Mount Everest, not Mount Everest.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. The Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore of
This is
movie on podcasts.
Mount Rushmore.
Well, that might be a graphic that I have to create for social
Could
media.
be.
For
Yeah, right
me,
now, what we have Statham, Gerard Butler, Shane Black, and Ryan Gosling. I think that's the 4. I think that's our
yeah, I mean, you could do worse.
do
That's a good
worse.
Mount Rushmore. Maybe that's our new logo on iTunes is just those 4 guys. Um, yeah, it depends on your mood for rewatching these, I think. It's a matter of intention for me. If I want to sit down and intentionally watch a film, like you said, I'm going to put on The Other Guys. If I want to be on my phone, or I'm sorry, I'm going to put on The Nice Guys. But if I want to be on my phone and I want to have something on where I can hear a bunch of lines that I remember and I can quote them later to my wife and drive her crazy, then I'm going to put on The Other Guys. So,
But I will also say, when I talked about watching these movies this week, when I went to watch The Other Guys, everyone in the family was game for watching it again. I said we all watched it like last December.
cool.
But they were all down. They loved it enough where all of them were willing to rewatch it. So it's definitely
Nice.
a note for that.
I'm gonna try to program matchups in the future with your family in mind, or like things that they would all sit down and watch. I like that. Okay, question number 2. Would you wanna hang out with anyone from these films?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think so.
Everyone?
I actually think I like hanging out with everybody, even though like none of it would be good. I don't actually know if they'd be good people to hang out with, but I would certainly enjoy it.
Just wanna hang out with Ryan Gosling. I mean, he doesn't have to be a character. I just wanna hang out with him. I kinda wanna hang out with Captain Gene. He seems like
Me,
the middle of the road guy,
me
like,
too.
he's funny, you know? Okay, number 3. Is this a career peak or valley for anyone involved?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I mean, unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, but I think it's a career peak for Shane Black. I really do, even though it wasn't financially successful. As I said, I think that this is like the pinnacle of what Shane Black does well. And I think The Nice Guys just brings all the elements of what makes him great into a movie. You know, and perfect cast. And I think this is kind of that. And the reason it's sad to me is because it wasn't financially successful. I think it's the last shot that he had to kind of be able to make the movies that he wants to make. And you can see by him just making that movie Play Dirty with Mark Wahlberg, you know, where his career is now. And I was very disappointed in that movie. It just didn't feel like it had his voice in it anymore. It just didn't work as well. And it actually made me sad because he may have lost the opportunity to have full control of his work now and be able to do the stuff that he did before, which he did so well. So it to me, looking back on it now, it feels like it probably was the peak for him.
He has to be like a script doctor now, right? I mean, he has to be
Probably.
working on things. Who wouldn't want him punching up a script?
Yeah, I believe that to be true, but yeah, I don't think he'll ever get the opportunity to just
Right.
be in total control of making a film
Yeah.
again. And Play Dirty definitely felt like something where someone else was involved in some way because it just didn't seem to have his voice the way that I'm used to seeing it.
To that point, I think this is a career high for his co-writer, Anthony Bagarazzi, who this was the first thing he wrote, and he co-wrote on Play Dirty. And then he went on to write Roadhouse, the Jake Gyllenhaal remake, which is a low point for everyone involved, as far as I'm concerned, because you don't touch Roadhouse. But
Okay, hang
he's
on.
working with
Stop.
yeah.
Allow me to be really mad for a second. The
Okay,
fact that we're getting a
please.
sequel to Roadhouse and
Yeah,
we did not get a sequel to The Nice Guys tells you everything that is wrong with Hollywood today.
yeah,
Period.
yep.
Just a
I
travesty.
preach. Yeah, it sucks. I'll never see it. I'll never see Roadhouse. I refuse. But it's Amazon, right? So that tells you a lot about
Yeah, it's
content
just,
creation and
jeez.
uh but yeah, Anthony Baccarazzi, he and Shane Black are writing a new film called Doc Savage, which is based on an old Lester Dent cowboy book. So,
Oh, is it based on? I actually thought it was based on a comic book. There was a comic book character named Doc Savage.
well, maybe it is a comic book, but the Lester Dent is a like a Western writer, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that guy, Anthony Bagarazzi, like, where does he go from here? He's not Shane Black, and he's the co-writer of this. So I don't know if this didn't get Shane Black more things to do, what is it going to do for this guy? You know? So unfortunately, but who knows? I mean, this crazy world. Um, would one of these films be better if Steven Spielberg directed it?
No, no.
Yeah.
This is a hard no for both of these because in a way it's like yeah these are both uh very particular filmmakers. Like I honestly think that if you watch both of these movies, you know exactly who directed both of them. As a matter of fact, with The Nice Guys, my wife didn't even know that Shane Black had written and directed it. But when she watched it, she was like, "This seems just like a Shane Black movie." I'm like, "Yeah, yes, it does." So, I mean, that tells you what you need to know. It's like these are two filmmakers that have very distinct styles that are recognizable if you know their work.
Yeah. I agree completely. Like Spielberg, and you can't put a Spielberg lens on these unless you make it a drama. I can see the sort of high conspiracy. It's almost like Minority Report, right? Where you have a guy investigating this greater conspiracy, but the tone is not a Spielberg tone. So no, leave him alone. Would either film be better if you swapped lead actors?
This is a fascinating thought experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, would it? I don't think so. I certainly think that the other guys would be fun if you put Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling into it. I would totally watch that movie. That would be a good time. And I also think I would absolutely watch The Nice Guys if Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg were in it. I don't know. I mean, I could honestly see it work. It wouldn't be better by any stretch, but they both would be movies I would absolutely go and see.
See, I don't see anybody being able to cross over except Ryan Gosling. I can see Ryan Gosling and the other guys, but I can't see Wahlberg in the Russell Crowe role because he's he's so serious that it's funny, and Russell Crowe is just he's not as much of a caricature as Mark Wahlberg is when he's playing comedy, when he's playing serious guy being funny, and I can't see Will Ferrell in either of those roles in The Nice
I
Guys.
actually really could. As I'm thinking about it in my head, I'm seeing it, and I'm not seeing him play it the same way Ryan Gosling would play it, of course, but he would
Yes.
play it in his own way. But it would make the movie ridiculous without. I mean, it
Yeah,
would make it a very silly movie. But
that's
could
the
he do it?
thing.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
I think they're two very different brands of
yeah,
comedy.
I could
And
see him
so,
rolling down the hill in that scene and landing at the bottom and just getting up and saying like a bunch of ridiculous things like you know, I think I pulled a hamstring on that one or so or what just whatever he would say in that Will Ferrell way. It's like, wow,
right.
that was a much farther fall than I expected. Like just something,
Yeah,
just go with that for like 5 minutes. I
it would
could
be a full
100% see
minute.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Like,
yeah.
can you see Russell Brand dancing sarcastically in a ballet studio?
Actually, by the way, I'm really glad you mentioned that. That is the one thing that is my favorite line by far of this movie. Where he's like, "You learn to dance that way sarcastically," which is just such a
Yeah.
great way of saying something. I wonder if that was in the script because that makes me laugh out loud every single time he says it and the way that he says it. What a great way of putting something. Like I just would never think to phrase that in that way.
Yeah, it's really
So just
funny.
really fantastic.
By the way, shout out to Lindsay Sloan, who plays Mark Wahlberg's ex, and we saw her in
She's out of my league. One of your favorites.
She's
Yeah.
Out of My League.
Thought about
Yeah,
it immediately.
earlier. Yeah. So go listen to that episode and definitely watch that movie. All right, I think we know where we're going for this, but let's look at our poll results. This is awesome. We got 100 votes this week, which is very cool. Across social platforms, follow us. We are Movie Throwdown Pod on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, everywhere. And vote in our polls. It seems like you listened to me last week and you did vote this week. 100 votes, 62 to 39. I guess it's 101 votes. 62 to 39. I think you know where this goes. The Nice
Yeah.
Guys is our winner.
I'm
So
thrilled. I'm thrilled to even know that many people have seen it and love it. That's great.
well, I don't know if everybody's seen it. I think they just vote on polls they see as they're scrolling.
Maybe
and
this
don't pay
will
attention.
inspire them to see it. That would be great.
I hope so. You know, with the other guys doing better at the box office and the Nice Guys sort of having this reputation for being something that not a lot of people have seen, but people who have seen it really like it. It's great to see more people voting for that. Because like you said, hopefully they know it or they will go see it. Because I think, these are both great films. And I thank your son for me because I had a lot more fun watching both of these and much more of a good time thinking about the two of them together than I
Oh.
thought I would.
Don't think I'm not
So-
thinking to myself that my son may be better at picking these movies than I am. But it's not a great feeling.
Maybe we should just make him like the matchup
Yeah.
master.
No,
and
he's
then we
making the
just are
executive producer who just picks all the
talent.
matchups.
Yeah. All right. So The Nice Guys is our winner this week. And let's talk about next week's episode. I'm really excited about this one because we're going to get out of the mid 2000s. Everything we've done lately has been like kind of late 90s through the 2010s. And I want to branch out a little bit, even though one of these is going to be set in present time. We're going to talk about one of my favorite films from 1974. It's Joseph Sargent's The Taking of Pelham 123, starring Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw. If you haven't seen this film, go watch it. It's just very emblematic of what that period was in filmmaking. And it's so good that Tony Scott made a remake of it in 2009 with Denzel Washington and John Travolta. So this is kind of the first time we're going to do a remake versus the original. And I'm really excited to see how that goes because as we established with our Days of Thunder episode, Tony Scott is just a master of his craft. He's so good at making films. And can he take something that's not original material and turn it into something contemporary? It's going to be fun to talk about. Next week, join us for that. It's going to be The Taking of Pelham 123 versus The Taking of Pelham 123. And we look forward to talking about that, and we hope you'll come back. We will see you then. So long.